Hey everybody, welcome back to Poets Return. I'm Melissa Bowie, your host, and we are continuing the segment of Minisodes featuring Conor Turoci and myself discussing philosophy of process, finishing work. In this episode specifically, we talk about the importance of community as a writer, having somewhere that you can be supported, have people that you can bounce ideas off of, and cultivate relationships where you can sort of find a balance between a nurturing space, a supportive space, and also having that constructive space where you feel safe to hear the criticism or the honest, sometimes necessary advice. That's not a great idea. I hope everybody out there is staying as healthy as possible. I know it's a crazy time right now. It's affected a lot of people. It's affecting me. It's affecting a lot of my loved ones. And I just hope whatever's going on for you, whatever's happening, I hope that you are safe, that you are healthy, and that through this time, I know a lot of us, especially in Los Angeles, are in industries that are deeply affected by this, but I just hope that you're able to persevere and keep the hope, keep the faith that this will pass, and we'll have more content to write about, I guess. That's pretty much the only positive that I can think of right now. But anyway, this episode is, again, part of this Minisode series with Conor talking about it's really he and I. We have been working on At the Edge of the Wilderness, which is a 4-act play. It's an onstage Western, talk about ambitious, that we've been working on since 2013. In 2013, we didn't really know what we were doing, which you'll hear in this segment, us kind of talk and reflect about how it all came to be. But we didn't really know what we were starting. We just knew we had this idea. We were very inspired, very motivated, and just so impassioned by this idea and this theme. And we've continued to work on it, even though he and I have not been geographically nearby for quite some time. And even when we were on very different schedules in Los Angeles. Even if you live in Los Angeles, as people that live here know, and in many big cities know, just because you live in the same city doesn't mean you're nearby. And especially here, lovely Conor did not have a car for the last bit that he was here, and he did not live near me, so he was always taking public transportation and coming from all hours of the night to just so that we could work, so that we could write, even if it was just a page, even if it was 2 pages, even if we just ended up drinking whiskey and talking about what needed to happen or what happened that day that inspired us. So that's why this episode is titled Community, because I firmly believe that you do need, even if it's just one person, to be able to bounce your ideas off of. And again, that's a theme we've touched on with Amy and Flannery and Kingdom of Pavement. Their whole publication is based on creating a safe space for a community of artists. So the beginning of this, we do get a little tangential at moments. We talk about the past, we reminisce, but I think it's part of understanding the whole idea of this is collaborating with someone on any project, dance, writing, an art piece of any form. It can be very difficult, challenging, and also very rewarding, especially when the two of you stick it out and you just finish it. So here's the first part of this episode titled Community, and here are Conor and myself pretty much shooting the shit.
I think it's a very special, difficult, and interesting experience. And I think especially with you and me and our history and the fact that we've been doing this since 2013.
I'm sorry, since when?
Dude.
It's 2013?
2013.
Oh.
But if you think about it, shut up. You don't get to say that because you're still in your 20s, son. You're
Not
still
for
in your
long.
20s.
My wife is about to turn 30.
Okay, but it's a huge difference. Once you're in the 3-0 and you hear a 28-year-old be like, oh, I'm almost there, it's like you've got all the time in the world.
Fair enough. All due respect.
No, but in our defense, we didn't really know. We knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't.
We had no idea what we were getting into.
We did it one night at my apartment, had this inspiration. We came up with these characters, and that was literally the inception of At the Edge of the Wilderness. Conception, inception, like that was that. There was no premeditation.
Yeah, no, I surprisingly, I remember that night.
I do too. And so Conor and I both went to Cal State Fullerton, and we both had a common ground in writing. I actually started getting close with Conor because of a piece that I wrote that he acted in. And it was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, my writing could be brought to life. So again, if I never fully thank you for bringing that character. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude. So
it's an extremely enjoyable experience to work on that. I actually think about that moment in when we were performing that, where remember how there was supposed to be, we turned on the vinyl player and there's supposed to be "Crazy on You" by Heart playing.
Mhm.
And there was one performance where the audio, I guess, or the people in the audio booth didn't cue it up correctly, or something went wrong with it, and they had to go to YouTube to find it. And so we were just kind of sitting there like
yes,
and you trying to improv, and it came up without any ads. And so now when I'm on YouTube, and it's always like 2 or 3 ads that come up, I'm like, wow, thank God we aren't doing that play now, because that wouldn't have come up without ads.
That would, yeah. Definitely. It worked. It still worked. Yeah. But that was a really cool experience. And Conor and I started just kind of sharing little bits and pieces of our writing together, sort of similarly with, I've had other people on the podcast.
We'd read out loud to each other after several shots of whiskey.
Exactly. You get all, drunk and weepy and vulnerable, and it was also a really formative experience, I think, because you're going through this stressful thing, which college for anyone is stressful. Going through any program is stressful. And when you're
then keep on top of that breakups and the other, teenage hormonal dramas that happen.
Right. And so I think writing was always sort of a safe place for both of us together. We could always share.
And on top of that, I think it's really important for someone in any creativity or any creative field, I guess would be the best word, or creative discipline. That's the better word. In any creative discipline, to have a community, even if it's just one other person that they can go to and talk about it. Like, one of the most valuable things for me, our hanging out together in college, was that it was someone I could talk about writing with. Someone I could just sort of meet together and go, oh, hey, this is my experience of writing right now. Is this matching yours? Like, sort of like comparing notes on our disciplines. And that helped me grow and compare, like, oh, this is, I could go this path, I could go this path. Like, having someone else to bounce thoughts on the discipline off of, I think, is really important for any creative person to have, particularly in the formative parts of those years. And in the formative years of building that craft.
Absolutely. I think it's also a very rare experience, and we had the blessing and privilege of having a slight commune within our community with what you guys worked on when you did, what was it called? State?
Conor and a few other friends wrote this entire script called State, very creative. And it was also really cool because we had this little commune where we had writers working together, people that wanted to direct, people that wanted to kind of produce, all the actors getting together to read the script. And I remember it was like one Saturday we all read through the script. And it was so cool because it felt like it was really, we were this independent little society, and the sort of, I don't know, the establishment of these inspirational institutions. And it really felt like that at the time. And of course, people dispersed and people found other careers, and some of us don't even talk anymore. But I think the whole point was that was so special for us to have that at that time. It just felt exciting and it felt possible. And I miss that. Sometimes in the world, when you get out there, everything feels impossible. So it's still special to me, that time and those people.
Or what's going on with this person or this program or whatever. But it was mostly, and that's one of my one of my favorite, most blissful memories of college is having people that I could just sit down and talk about what I was inspired by and what they were inspired by, and let's work, let's do it. And I had you, I had Ryan, I had multiple people, and sometimes I look and I'm like, dang, I was really, like, I need to remember how fortunate and special that experience was, because it's not every day that you find multiple people that are willing to sit at the wall with you between class and listen to you read from your fucking diary.
Conor and I tend to agree on a lot of things, but I actually think the strength of our collaborative relationship as writers is the fact that we are very different people. Conor is very introverted. I'm more extroverted. We have different perspectives on things. Even when we disagree, which happens quite often, creatively, we use it constructively. We're not afraid to tell the other person, "No, I don't like that line," or "I don't think that character would say that." We've created such a safe space that I think it's a very rare gift to have with someone where you don't feel vulnerable and can be honest and can have them be honest with you. So I guess to say that we agree on most things is we agree that the best decision wins, that finding the grain of truth in any scenario, understanding the root of the character, the super objective, making them three-dimensional, we agree on all of those things. Our technique, our craft, and the discipline that we share, I think keeps us on the same page, even though we might be very different people, coming from very different backgrounds creatively. But we both have very different perspectives on the education we got in college. Whereas, I feel A, B, and C about the program, Conor feels this way. So even though we might differ on what we both walked away from that education with, we both walked away knowing that we had learned a sort of emotional resilience and an absolute respect for the craft that we were learning and understanding that it was much bigger than we were. And the other big thing was, like we just said, having that safe space to share, having that community, knowing that we were learning from each other. Amid all of the wonderful lessons we were learning in class and on stage and from the books we were reading, the plays we were reading, the scenes we were doing, we were learning from each other. And not just in the classroom, not just in performance, but we were learning so much from our peers and how we were interpreting this experience, how we were finding different methods to cultivate our art form and our craft. And it was just really cool to see everybody kind of battle and struggle and suffer together, but in a beautiful way, in a learning way, in an awkward way, where you're that little wobbly deer and you haven't learned how to walk yet. But yeah, these relationships, these experiences, both personally and creatively, we still draw inspiration from today. And it's proof that we learned so much from each other. And that is, I think, the true value of education.
As far as what I got out of college, I think the most valuable thing I got out of going to college was having the people around me I could bounce ideas off of, people around me that helped me figure out what my discipline was, what sort of writer I wanted to be, what writing meant. And if I hadn't gone to college, which was my plan, I didn't want to go to college. If I had just moved straight to LA and started acting there and of course done writing anyway, because I'd always written, I don't think I ever would have found a community like that. Certainly not one who's as fulfilling. Now, I mean, obviously it's possible I might have, but I don't really think I would have because of what I did experience when I did move to LA. So I think that you and Ryan were probably the two most important things I got out of college. That and obviously my wife. But the degree, what was way more valuable was writing. What was way more valuable was the people I met.
So in this last little segment, it's not a novel idea. It's nothing new. I mean, we know the famous saying, "Art imitates life, life imitates art," so on and so forth. As artists, we reflect on the world around us. And at the edge of the wilderness for Conor and I, I've definitely changed. The piece has changed. Conor's changed. We've evolved. The world has evolved. Things in our immediate environment and our global environment universally have become much, much more urgent. The stakes have become heightened. And so, of course, we're going to react and respond. That's an artist's job, is to react and respond to the world that's happening around you. And and so At the Edge has definitely changed, and we, in reflecting upon how it's changed, how we have evolved, how the world has kind of changed, it's interesting to think about how in such a little amount of time so much can get turned on its head, how much can grow positively, negatively, sometimes ambiguously. We don't even know what it might mean at this moment. And that's taking it all back to Poet's Return, the process, the writer's process, finding the story, the poetry, whatever it is that's going to reach the audience and be palpable enough to make people feel what you want them to feel, or what they need to feel, or what the world might need to feel. So yeah, in this last little segment, we definitely talk about reflection on the world and how art will change and how the stories, no matter how well you know your characters and you have it nailed down,
but we're living in a time
things
where
can always
we're very, I feel like,
change.
We're both
And don't ever put anything in a
desensitized
box.
and yet
'cause
overstimulated. It's a very
never say
confusing
never, right? Even when
dichotomy.
it comes to your
Completely,
stories.
I 100% agree with that.
It's really confusing
Desensitized
because
and overstimulated.
I don't know. It's like we're constantly. I think one of the hardest things about being in this time is that it's hard to find a balance, an even layer with what's being thrown at us, and I guess question mark. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much coming at us. It's hard to tell. It's hard to sift through the shit.
Hard to sift through the shit, and you and I, again, with At the Edge of the Wilderness, our whole thing in 2013, we were so inspired by Chekhov and what we were learning and the environment, and going more into this idea of people really sitting down and talking these philosophical ideas out in an active, visceral way. We were in a space where we were extremely creatively inspired because we had a teacher who was so passionate about this playwright, and we were allowed to delve into this world that I don't think a lot of, especially American students, they don't get the genuine Stanislavski, which that's a whole other thing you and I would have to talk about. But I don't know. I think it's just this play, At the Edge of the Wilderness, has been watching this play evolve, watching how the whole script has evolved, I believe is very telling of how even in just the past 7 years, the world has changed. Because you see, how we've been like, okay, well, we can't this and this and this and this. Well, what about this? Things have become more urgent for us, even though you and I are separated by distance and other things now. I think there's become more of an urgency of message because
and I think now, particularly where the play is, where we've brought it to, it fits our time a lot better than it did when we started.
Completely.
And speaking of Chekhov, I've since graduating college, I've wanted to come back and read more and reread Chekhov multiple times, but I've never actually followed through with that desire. But I brought my which one was it? The Paul Schmidt. I brought the Paul Schmidt translation with me, and after I read what I'm currently reading right now, I'm gonna crack through Uncle Vanya again because it's been so long. I feel like
I know. I
need
to.
I'll
Friends, I know it's a scary time out there, but just remember, amid all the fear and chaos, maintain your community. Keep your community close, even if you have to quarantine yourself. Don't lose that creative community. Keep people in conversation. Keep working, keep growing, and keep thinking, keep writing. And of course, most important of all, as always, remember to use your words well, especially in times like these. Words go a long way. They create a lot of panic. So use them carefully, use them preciously, and use those words well. Take care of yourselves, friends. Stay safe, stay healthy. This audio production is copyright 2019 by the Poets Return podcast, all rights reserved. The copyrights for each story are held by the respective authors. No duplication or reproduction of this audio program is permitted without the written consent of Melissa Bowie.